The story of Glittery bearakeet begins quite some time ago in the land known as Kennyland, ran by the president, Kenny, protected by their god, Ashume. You probably know Kennyland by now, so we don't need to go over its history. But today, we're here to tell you the story of a very special member of the Kennyland, Glittery bearakeet. Once upon a time, it all began when one seemingly normal day in Kennyland, Kenny called 4 specific Hatchimals to his office. Hatchimal, the first Hatchimal to ever join Kennyland, Pink and Green Birtle, Hedgy Hen, but most importantly, Black bearakeet, otherwise known as Black. Kenny called these 4 to his office to explain quite the serious matter. The night before, 2 of Kennyland's most valuable Hatchimals, the golden lynxes, were captured. At the time, Kenny had no clue who had captured them, nor did he know what their plans were. No one saw or heard anything. The security cameras and any other types of tracking devices all showed nothing, almost as if it had never happened. Kenny explained to the 4 that they would find their abilities and would have good teamwork. He thanked them and was telling them that they needed to go on the journey to save the golden lynxes. He entrusted these 4 Hatchimals specifically to do that task. At first, the 4 were hesitant, considering that they were put in the spotlight, so to speak, out of nowhere. These 4 Hatchimals didn't really see this coming. It just kind of happened out of nowhere and was very abrupt for them. Those 4 Hatchimals also had seen or heard nothing on the night of the attack, but Kenny convinced them. Eventually, their journey began. The 4 worked together, going through Kennyland, finding different clues which would lead them to where the golden lynxes were being held. It eventually led them out of Kennyland to a new land. At the time, we did not know the name of this land. However, the environment was very much different to Kennyland. It was bright and hot. There were little strange creatures crawling on the Hatchimals, bug-like creatures, in fact. The team progressed forward, though, having troubles, battles, and more. But eventually, with the power of their teamwork, with Black's strength, Hedgy Hen's amazing flying abilities, Pink and Green Birtle's smartness, and Hatchimal's goofy personality, they persevered and were able to reach Meowser's castle. Meowser was the one who captured the golden lynxes. He planned to sell them for a huge profit of money, so that way he could take what he earned and invest it in higher equipment to take over the nearby Mushroom Kingdom. Just like in the games. A great battle happened between the Hatchimals and Meowser himself, where he shapeshifted into different forms where he was stronger, supposedly. After triumph, the 4 Hatchimals defeated him. Well, they came pretty close to it. Black got a feeling, a message, a soft spot in his heart, so to speak. He said, "Every good story has a good ending for both sides. That's what I think." At first, the other 3 were hesitant due to all that Meowser caused, but eventually they agreed. They gave Meowser a change of heart and turned him into a good man. Eventually, Meowser got the key and freed the golden lynxes. The next day, Meowser led Black and Pink and Green Birtle to his kitchen, where they both cooked up an amazing meal which they all ate together. From there on out, Meowser and the Golden Lynxes became a big part of the team, and together they all adventured back to Kennyland. The big event happened when they got back to Kennyland. Kenny had quite the few surprises waiting for all of them. Not only did Kenny be very shocked by the fact that they gave Meowser that sort of change of heart, he even helped Meowser to getting a proper job. As for the team, Kenny paid them a pretty big reward and gave them lots of thanking for their kindness and hard work. But someone else had another surprise for one of the 4 team members. Meet White, or White Bearakeet, Black's wife of 26 years at the time. Black and White fell in love being the 2 bearakeets and sharing common interests and other romance stuff. Yeah. Eventually, they got married. Both of them worked together in the medical field as doctors alongside of Kenny and later Purple and Yellow Draggle and Hatchimal. Also Bootsy being the first one to work with Kenny and the second Kennyland resident. White's big news was quite shocking and truly amazing. White was pregnant with a baby. She found out while Black and the team were out saving the Golden Lynxes. Black was very overjoyed with this news. And this is where the Golden Lynx adventure ended, but is far from where this story itself ends. White worked through her pregnancy. It wasn't an easy one, but it wasn't too difficult either. Eventually, the day came when it was time for White to give birth to their baby. But on this day, Hatchimal's twin, an evil force villain, had planned a big attack. Using special machines, Hatchimal's twin caused for all kinds of mischief. It started with strange encounters, like lights flickering, the egg sun in the sky looking off to Kenny, and more. And around 7 a.m., White's water broke. They needed to get to the hospital so White could give birth safely. Black was prepared. He quickly started the engine of their car and loaded their bags. They were all ready to roll. It had seemed that things would be a-okay for the bearakeets. But it wouldn't quite go that way. As they were outside, just about to pull away, Kenny came running towards Black at maximum speed. Black was concerned. He dropped what he was doing to check on his friend Kenny. After Kenny gathered himself together, Kenny explained the horrible truth. All of their medical supplies, whether being stored at the hospital, doctor's offices, backup facilities, and even normal supplies like paper towels and other things that wouldn't seem too useful, were gone in Kennyland from every resident's homes and all facilities. Whilst Kenny was explaining this, he learned that White's water had broke. He reacted with a smooth, "Fucking hell." This was not a good combo. However, Kenny told Black that there was no reason to worry. They were both doctors and were both still at the right place. They could do a home delivery and they could give birth to the baby safely. Kenny turned off the ignition of the car and stood there pondering what this could be. Was it like an evil villain, like Hatchimal's twin? At the time, he didn't quite know. Meanwhile, Black brought White back inside and propped her up on a pillow and made her as comfortable as possible for what would be coming soon. When Kenny came back inside, he told Black that the car was turned off and everything was ready to go. Kenny went to go grab some gloves from the cabinet inside of their house. When Kenny reached the medical supplies cabinet inside Black's house, he opened the door to see nothing, a completely empty cabinet. Kenny was stunned-shocked until his brain caught up and he remembered that all the supplies they needed were gone. They had nothing to work with other than their hands, or in Black's case, wings, and their skills. Together, they were confident. Before they got started, Kenny heard a voice. Purple and Yellow Draggle entered the scene. Kenny had texted him just before, letting him know about the situation. He asked where Hatchimal and Bootsy were, as he also texted them. Purple and Yellow Draggle explained that he had no idea where either were, but this did confirm one thing for Kenny. It must have been Hatchimal's twin. When Hatchimal's twin comes within a very close radius to Hatchimal, Hatchimal disappears. This explained that Hatchimal's twin had to be the one behind whatever was going on. Before Kenny, Black, Purple and Yellow Draggle, and White could process things any further, something horrible happened. BAM! Everyone fell down onto the hard wood floor. Purple and Yellow Draggle sustaining some injuries to his left wing. Kenny getting some back pain. But most importantly, and most horrifying, White fell on her pregnant belly. Kenny was shocked. After about a minute, he just couldn't take the stress and fainted. When he awoke, Purple and Yellow Draggle came over to explain the situation to Kenny. It turns out that the bed had been deleted from the universe, part of Hatchimal's twins' plan to erase not just supplies, but other things like furniture, toys, games, books, literally almost anything from the universe. Kenny was stunned by this news. Purple and Yellow Draggle explained that not only did he fall, Black fall, and Kenny fall, but also White. This brought the flashbacks back to Kenny, and he replayed the images in his head. He asked if White had fallen on her belly, and Purple and Yellow Draggle said yes. Then the team assessed the situation to find that the baby was thankfully still alive and moving inside of White. White did explain that she was in more pain, however. Kenny then asked Purple and Yellow Draggle to look outside the window. When Purple and Yellow Draggle did, he said that everything looked normal outside. There was rocks, grass, everything there should be. Kenny then said, "What if the floor collapses?" and explained that they needed to get outside as soon as possible. Purple and Yellow Draggle replied with that the outside environment wasn't the best place for giving birth, but Kenny counter-explained that they had no choice because if they fell through the floor, the baby was definitely dead. This lighted the fire in the team, and they knew they had to do it. Purple and Yellow Draggle went outside as Black and Kenny brought White out. Purple and Yellow Draggle stationed the team in a spot near the woods, but also not too far away from home. The team began following the medical procedures when dealing with birth. However, in about 45 minutes, they had made very minimum progress. The team was concerned. I was worried that this baby wasn't coming. So, what could we do? What did the team end up doing? This is the part where they put all the dots together. Kenny said that Hatchimal's twin had to be the mastermind behind this, and whatever Hatchimal's twin had caused for was most likely being controlled by a machine. If they destroyed the machine, it would restore everything. Exactly, Kenny! Brilliant! Purple and Yellow Draggle replied with. Purple and Yellow Draggle then tested the magical abilities, which had unfortunately been disabled by Hatchimal's twin. The magic was very crucial in defeating evil villains. Since there wasn't any, Kenny came up with the idea of assembling a big team of like 10 Hatchimals, hoping that Hatchimal's twin wouldn't be able to take down an army of Hatchimals even without their magical abilities. Once the team was assembled, they were about to leave when Kenny asked Purple and Yellow Drago a question. The question of, "Where's your brother?" Purple and Yellow Drago suddenly realized, and he was horrified. His brother was suddenly missing, and noticed, flashing back, that most of the Hatchimals at the Hatchimals house were also gone. Hatchimals were being deleted as well. This was a humongous problem. What could they do now? What they did was they gathered together and prayed to the gods, Ashume himself, for protection and to not disappear. Once the prayers were finished, the team went off. Kenny and the others kept trying while they were gone, but weren't able to make much more progress. Meanwhile, the team reached Hatchimal's twins' laboratory. They had to face a robot with a laser mechanism. This laser mechanism killed both Birtle and Glittery Birtle. It was down to 4 members left: Green Draggle, Pink and Green Birtle, Hamstar, and Glittery Panguala. But together they triumphed and destroyed Hatchimal's twin. But before they could react or do anything else, a special miracle happened. Ashume appeared. He explained that they did not need to see him often, but that they had served him very well today. He sent special blessings to everyone in Kennyland. A big flash happened. The team was teleported home. Birtle and Glittery Birtle had both come back to life. Later, Birtle began panicking, realizing, where were the others? But then the team realized that they were probably at the hospital. They had used the magical abilities which had been restored to teleport to the hospital. Once there, they found Kenny and the others with all of their needed equipment and supplies. Hatchimal was also back. It was a big special moment and lots of shocking news to everyone. Everyone cleared out, though, and prepared for the big event. About 30 minutes later, a normal vaginal birth occurred. White gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, which Black and White, via the help of Kenny, decided to later name Glittery Bearakeet. She has purple fur, a black belly, blue beak, blue wings, and a black and purple tail. She also has glitter all over her body. That's why Kenny came up with the name. She checked out completely healthy. Eventually the next day, Black, White, and Glittery Bearakeet went home and left the hospital. Kenny and Black and White and literally everyone were over the moon with joy. Everyone loved Glittery Bearakeet. She became the most popular baby in Kennyland history. But things wouldn't remain peaceful for long once again. Hatchimal's twin responded after some time. Like always, Hatchimal's twin wasn't defeated, though. He needed to adapt his plans. He wanted Glittery Bearakeet gone from the world from the start. That was the reason that he did everything to begin with. He wanted to cause rage, sadness, and death. In the end, he didn't achieve any of it. But he wasn't done fighting and was going to try again. White and Black began enjoying their time with their new little baby daughter, Glittery Bearakeet, of course. But a problem did arise. They started noticing strange noises and things happening. One night, unexplainably, they heard gunshot noises, which were caused by Hatchimal's twin. Kenny had already caught the little rascal, as he put it. But Hatchimals Twin was saying strange things, like it was all going to plan, and how he wanted them to kill him, because it was all going to his plan. This creeped everyone out. But over time, it got worse. Kidnappings occurred. Glittery Bearakeet ended up in places she really shouldn't have. Once in a dumpster, once in the middle of a road. Every single time there was no trace. Even though Kenny installed extra security into White and Black's home, the cameras, motion sensors, and other devices never picked up anything. Again, it was all as if it was never happening, even though it was. Black had broken down multiple times, obviously being very upset that his daughter was being kidnapped. Repeatedly. Kenny kept saying, though, there was a purpose to it. He kept explaining that he had very big plans with Glittery Bearakeet. Eventually, Kenny decided that he needed to age Glittery Bearakeet up early to try to contradict Hatchimals Twin's damage and to help Glittery Bearakeet be able to fend for herself. Unfortunately for Kenny, this backfired, because what ended up happening is it only pushed forward Hatchimals Twin's plans faster. Hatchimals Twin was happy with Kenny's, quote, mistake. Eventually, over time, Glittery Bearakeet grew up into a playful toddler and into a kid. The attacks, kidnappings, and more kept happening, though. There were breaks at points, but things didn't stay peaceful for long. Kenny kept noticing spy equipment, microchips, and other devices were being implanted into Glittery Bearakeet. He was very uncomfortable with this, but was also uncomfortable with removing them, especially in a young child. He noted that she would have to live with them, at least for now. Eventually, Glittery Bearakeet grew up into a teenager. But this is when weird things started occurring. Worse things, so to speak. Anytime Glittery Bearakeet was in a sensitive moment, like getting out of the shower or changing her clothes, White and Black would always notice they felt like someone was watching. Glittery Bearakeet even once said she once felt someone touch her on the back of the head while she was changing her clothes. There was no proof, nothing physical, and nothing any of the cameras picked up, but Kenny knew that Hatchimals Twin was doing a disgusting act. He was very apologetic to White and Black, but said there was nothing they could do but just deal with it. Glittery Bearakeet eventually grew into a young adult, and that's when everything really went down. Glittery Bearakeet was doing amazing, soaring through a college program of job exploration, giving her high opportunities in almost any career. A very special yet expensive program offered by Kenny at the Kennyland College. He was not the professor, but there was a good one, teaching a very small class. Glittery Bearakeet had always done amazing with everything growing up, getting great grades and lots of appraisal. She was a perfect kid and a perfect adult. Too perfect for Hatchimals Twin, so much so that he eventually couldn't wait anymore and pushed his plans forward even faster. He especially saw the right opportunity coming when Kenny made his, quote, mistake. Once again, one seemingly normal day to most Kennylanders, Kenny woke up to his alarm around 6 in the morning. He had a big day ahead of him on that particular day. He got up, got dressed, and got himself ready for the day. He headed out first to a new cafe opening in Kennyland by his good friend Brewster. Kenny and Rover gathered together at Brewster's new cafe to hang out and chat, and for Kenny to get some breakfast. They both enjoyed their time together. Kenny met up with a few friends throughout the day, like Bertle and Furby. He's very busy around Kennyland. He eventually went home to start a new project. On that day, Kenny brought back 2 lost Kennyland residents, the Peacat twins. They used to be the Kennyland cops after the Deerials. However, the Deerials eventually came back, and the Peacats had to go for a while, as Kenny put it. But eventually the Deerials went again, and Kenny had finally made up to his final decision. He got a new body for the Peacats, and put their brains back inside. They had all their old memories, and would build many new ones, and would become the Kennyland Cops once again, alongside other staff, of course. He introduced them back to the people who remembered, and introduced them for the first time to the people who were new. Later, Kenny got them situated with a new house, which was free of charge since they had done so much good work for Kenny in the past, and Kenny was, of course, a very generous person himself. Once complete, it was time for Kenny to do a news broadcast with Purple and Green Draggle. In this broadcast, Kenny made a quick law update. Then Red and Yellow Penguin addressed an upcoming weather change, and then the news ended there. Kenny did some more work for a few hours, working mostly normal jobs and shifts. He got home a bit late, close to 9 p.m. He got home, relaxed, and spent a little time to himself. Around midnight, he went to sleep. But Kenny had big plans for the next day as well. When Kenny had encountered Bertle earlier in the day, Bertle asked if they were still heading out tomorrow. Where were they heading? Kenny, Bertle, Glittery Bertle, Hatchimal, and Alicorn would be heading out to the Outer Woods world, which is where the Golden Lynx hunt occurred. They eventually learned more about this nearby land to the mainland of Kennyland. Kenny, surprisingly, in all the years of being in Kennyland, never knew much about the Outer Woods world. He was excited to go there for the first time properly. He'd only passed through a few times before on the train. The next day, Kenny got to wake up a bit later after 8 a.m. He got ready for the day, took a shower, and headed to Bertle's house. There, the gang met up. Glittery Bertle then made them a portal, and they teleported to the Outer Woods world. But meanwhile, Hatchimal's twin was plotting for the big strike. Hatchimal's twin was going to use Kenny's absence to his advantage. The team enjoyed their time out in the Outer Woods world, playing some hide and seek together. Eventually, the team met up with some new faces and some returning faces, but they did not expect to see any of which outside. Furby and Furby's family, some new friends called the Fuzzy Wonders, and Benny the cat, who had previously been seen by the team when they went on the Golden Lynx hunt. They enjoyed their time chatting together and getting to meet each other. They decided as a team collectively to play a huge round of hide and seek where Kenny would find them all. But as Kenny started counting, something happened. Kenny heard his walkie-talkie crackle. He was concerned because he had told Blue and Yellow Draggle or anyone else that he left in charge to only message him if it was extremely urgent. This was Kenny's second off day throughout the whole year, and he wanted to make it count. He called the team back together and explained that his walkie-talkie had gone off, and he wanted to gather everyone together so he could check it. He went over and gathered his walkie-talkie, then came in loud and clear. In response, Kenny heard Blue and Yellow Draggle, who sounded very urgent. Blue and Yellow Draggle explained that there was a huge attack while Kenny was gone by Hatchimals twin and other evil forces, and Glittery bearakeet had been kidnapped. There were around 32 victims. Around half of the Hatchimal population was dead. Kenny was shocked. The others were questioning what was happening, but Kenny told them to wait. Once he had finished the call, he explained to the team the horrible news. Everyone was very upset and worried. Kenny questioned his friendship with everyone and admitted he was a horrible friend for having to leave them. Bertle slapped him on the leg and told him that it would be okay, and one of the Furbies explained that he had to deal with what was going on in his land, and he had to defend his land. They would stay in their land safe and sound as Kenny took care of his. Kenny, Bertle, Hatchimal, Glittery Bertle, and Alicorn all headed back towards Kennyland in a panic. Glittery Bertle once again made them a portal to get them right there, but Kenny warned Hatchimal that he would disappear as soon as they got there because of Hatchimal's twin's presence. Hatchimal asked what if he stayed in the Outerworlds world, but Kenny explained that that would create clone wars and other issues. Bertle was in agreement, and Hatchimal eventually understood, taking the sort of sacrifice. They all spawned back in Kennyland. As soon as Hatchimal spawned, he disappeared. Kenny, Bertle, Glittery Bertle, and Alicorn all adventured into Kennyland. Kenny was noticing damages and things, but wasn't really sure about the full extent yet. Eventually, they met up with Blue and Yellow Draggle, who explained a bit of the situation. Kenny eventually told him to take the team and any other survivor Hatchimals into his office, where they could be protected by the remaining guardians. Kenny then went to the Hatchimal house, where there were very, very few Hatchimals inside. Kenny was talking to Bertle too, asking questions about what happened. Once Kenny got the full picture of the story, he was mind blown about how severe things have gotten. Eventually, Kenny put together a team. This team adventured once again to Hatchimal Twins' laboratory. But at Hatchimal Twins' laboratory, things were quite a bustle. Hatchimal's twin had captured Glittery bearakeet and had interesting plans. Hatchimal's twin worked with many villains like Scorch and the Evil Hand People group, the most evil ones, named Ugadoo, Matthew, and Entree. Very strange names, if I do say so myself. But most importantly, the one step above Hatchimal's twin, Denny, Kenny's evil twin brother that had been created through Clone Wars. He had been in hiding for years, but now was helping out with the biggest plan that Hatchimal's twin had ever executed. There was still one a step above Denny, but he was not seen. Hatchimal's twin noticed the team approaching and told Denny to make sure that they got nowhere near the laboratory. He enthusiastically agreed, where Hatchimal's twin then went off into the other room to do something unthinkable with Glittery bearakeet. Hatchimal's twin raped Glittery bearakeet. When the team arrived, they faced guards, a robot, Scorch. Kenny had one of his teeth cracked and was bleeding rapidly. Some of the team got eliminated by lasers, but the team continued to persevere. But when they got to Denny, they were in shock. Everyone felt like they were being watched. Kenny suddenly felt like he was being choked and then was being slapped on the face. That's when Denny showed up right next to Kenny. The team was so confused. Denny introduced himself. For the bitches that don't know me by now. Eventually, Denny said a magic word, which instantly killed Kenny. With Kenny gone, the team was weak. Denny eventually asked the question of who he should eliminate next. Black? Bertle? When he reached towards Bertle, Bertle said, "Don't touch me." "Don't touch me!" Which was a big mistake. Denny grabbed Bertle and swung her around and threw her so hard into the wall that it instantly killed her. It was now just Purple and Yellow Draggle and Black. Purple and Yellow Draggle asked what Denny wanted. Denny explained, "Oh, Purple and Yellow Draggle, I just want you all to die." He just wanted death. He would have said to fuck off. But they had already broken the entry, and it was too late for retrieval. Eventually, Purple and Yellow Draggle and Black began whispering together. Purple and Yellow Draggle sent a special signal. He didn't have magic, but what he did have is special signals that he could still send. Glittery Bertle showed up instantly, teleporting into the room. They realized Glittery Bertle still had magic, because the magic had been taken away. But since Glittery Bertle was a magical Hatchimal, outside of Kennyland, when the attack happened, Glittery Bertle still had magical abilities when returning. Eventually, Hatchimal's twin, otherwise known as Adolf Hitler, as Denny referred to him as, showed up in the room, noticing the magical Hatchimal in the room. But then Hatchimal's twin got close to Black. "Oh, Black, my favorite one, come here for a little hug. Let me tell you a secret." He whispered the horrible secret about Glittery bearakeet into his ear. Black looked so stunned. Purple and Yellow Draggle was too. Even Glittery Bertle had a twitch. But they couldn't do anything in that moment and needed to kill Hatchimal's twin and Denny. Glittery Bertle kept using all the magic, which eventually led to Hatchimal's twin's demise. But Denny then sent a spell which froze everyone and prevented them from moving any further. He then killed all of them with one big swing of his fist and also brought Hatchimal's twin back from the dead. It has seemed that it was over there, and there was no hope. But then the Hatchimals and Kenny heard a voice. Ashume's voice. They were up in a heavenly-like state. But Ashume brought them all back to life, reverted all the damages, and told them about the special tree in the center of Kennyland that only Kenny had known about. There was a special tree underground, deep in Kennyland. When there were battles, this tree would get energy. Once it had enough, an evil force could be eliminated. They did not have enough to eliminate Denny, nor this one that is the step above, but they had enough to get Hatchimal's twin out of the universe forever. Everyone woke up, back together, in Hatchimal's twin's lair. The Hatchimals that were laserified woke up at the Hatchimal house. An emotional moment occurred between Black and the gang when Kenny explained what he had been hiding from Black and couldn't tell him at the time to ruin the surprise. Together, they surrounded Hatchimal's twin, asking for his last words. Hatchimal's twin actually apologized and was trying to get out of it, but Kenny was too insistent and said that he had chances to stop ages ago, and now they were taking matters into their own hands. Kenny sang a special song. Once complete, Hatchimal's twin was gone and would never, ever return. Then, Kenny grabbed a bomb that he had stashed away. Him and Blue and Yellow Drago lit it. Everyone left the property and watched the best explosion ever as the laboratory and anything inside also exploded. By this point, the team had also acquired Glittery Bearakeet in her very shaken state. Ashume later explained that those damages couldn't be reverted, the physical or mental damages, but said that any trackers and spy equipment that Hatchimals twin had installed was gone from Glittery Bearakeet forever as well. Kenny, Black, and White eventually were able to assess Glittery Bearakeet, got her all cleaned up and taken care of. An emotional moment occurred once again. Later, Purple and Green Drago and Blue and Green Drago both interviewed many people on the news, interviewing Kenny, Black, White, Glittery Bearakeet, and Bertle about what happened. To the Hatchimals who hadn't heard the full story yet, they were shocked. But the good news was that it was over, once and for all, and Hatchimals twin would never return ever again. There was a lot of mental recovery yet, but Kenny promised to do his best to get his best therapist and himself to treat as many Hatchimals that needed treatment as possible. Some would have PTSD from the battle forever, but Kenny promised to do his best like always. The battles of Glittery Bearakeet's life were over. And now, Glittery Bearakeet could get her true purpose. Find out the final steps of Glittery Bearakeet's life in the upcoming final episode of Glittery Bearakeet, the series, Glittery Bearakeet, Part 11. And thank you for listening to the full story of Glittery Bearakeet's life. I hope you enjoyed it, and I don't hope, but I sure enjoyed telling it to you. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more. I'm Kenny, signing out.